Hey guys, today we are turning a dollar store drink dispenser into a planted nano aquarium. It's going to be a lot of fun and I can't wait to show you. So here it is, this 2-gallon drink dispenser from Family Dollar runs for about $8 and it's a soft, lightweight plastic. I don't think it will last forever, but it does have that built-in nozzle and we're going to use that for our aquarium today. It's going to be a lot of fun. So first we need to rinse the jug, which I've already done, and now we're going to apply some fluval stratum as our substrate. This may not be strictly necessary if you're building one of these at home, but I do like the effect that it has on our plants. I like the visual effect as well. And our pets, our microfauna, they seem to enjoy burrowing down into this stuff, so it works out on many different layers. This is the same bag of fluval stratum that I've been using for a while now. And before we fill the tank, I have a little preparation step here. I've noticed that spraying the stratum a bit before you add your water can help to prevent the dust and debris from flying around. So I definitely suggest that you mist your stratum before you try to fill your tank. And here we go. So I am going to clean the aquarium a little bit and we're going to fill it up. Now, if you're using fluval stratum at home, you have to be very, very careful when you fill the tank, or you will make a mess. You'll have a soupy brown water, just a messy tank. You'll have to start over. Now, you can rinse the fluval stratum beforehand, but a lot of that dust and debris that is trapped on it is valuable for our plants, the nutrients they need. So we're not going to rinse the substrate. I just misted it a little bit, which will help a lot. And we're going to very carefully and very slowly fill the tank. And I'm using a lid from another project here. We're going to pour water directly into that lid, and it will slowly overflow. And this will break up the force of the water as I add it to the aquarium. I don't want to spend too much of the video on this part, but this is a very slow process. There are no shortcuts. You have to be very careful and methodical when you fill up your tank, at least if you're working with fluval stratum. I am investigating building my own aqua soil. It shouldn't be impossible, and I've made some strides towards success so far, but we'll worry about that another day. So here we go. The tank is full, and now we're going to add a few stones as hardscape. And I like to think of this as functional hardscape. Many people will advise you not to use marble in your project because it will modify your parameters of your water. And that's exactly why I like to use it. So I'm using those modifications intentionally. This will help to keep the pH where I want it to be, not acidic, more neutral, more base. And that's good for our snails and many of our plants as well. The fluval stratum will potentially make the water very acidic, so that marble stone will help to balance that out. And now we're going to add a plant. This is small leaf spiderwort, a cutting taken directly from the backyard oasis. And I'm going to use a little piece of a pool noodle as a floating island to support the plant and allow it to stay up above the water's surface, but the roots down in the water. And I've never used a pool noodle like this before. There's a chance it may break down and degrade, but I think it'll be okay. And this will allow our spiderwort to grow vertical and be very comfortable. This plant will grow in an aquatic situation like this very happily, but if you submerge the leaves underwater, it will fail. So you have to keep it up above the surface like this. There we go. And now I am going to add an air stone in here, and that's because we will be running fish in this tank. 2 fish, to be precise. And I'm hoping to use this as a nursery for my guppies so that we can, get these 2 certain guppies to breed, and then we can collect the fry and use them in other projects. I do like to use a lava rock. I drill through a lava, through a lava rock partially, and then I run my airline into that. The rock does not help to split up the bubbles at all. It just helps to weigh down the airline. And so now we're going to add some bladder snails and some water meal. Now you could drip acclimate your bladder snails if you really want to, but these guys are pretty tough, and generally they will survive transfer into a whole new world. They usually survive. Yeah, there's a chance with adult bladder snails, with older snails, that the shock of transfer can kill them, and that does happen occasionally. You'll have better luck with younger snails, and you'll have the best chance with snail eggs, which are pretty easy to collect if you have them in other aquariums, or maybe a friend has some bladder snails. You can just get a little cluster of eggs, drop that in your tank, and they'll be fully adapted to that environment when they hatch. So it works out really well. Next, we'll be adding a seashell, a scallop shell, and this is just another source of calcium in the aquarium that will slowly break down as the water becomes acidic. It will slowly dissolve. And also, you'll see your snails rasping on that quite a bit. They will get up there and scrape on those stones and on that shell. Next, you'll see another plant. This is Java moss, I believe. And this is from my Guppy tank, which has a very interesting intake on one of the filters here. It's entirely encrusted in moss. It's alive. And I just took a little cutting of this. We're going to try to replicate this setup here in our nano aquarium. I don't have a hang-on back in here, but I do have a floating island for the spiderwort. So I'm thinking we can just put the little fragments of moss either in the water or on that piece of pool noodle, and I should hopefully recreate the planted filter that we have in the Guppy tank. I don't show my Guppy tank much because I think people would be very judgmental. The substrate is mostly made of old snail shells and seashells, and obviously my filters are a bit strange, and yeah. So I just don't show the Guppy tank too much. Here we go. So we have our moss floating on the surface. We have our emergent plant, our dayflower, and now we're going to add some spike rush. And I'm wrong, that was not dayflower, that's spiderwort. It's related. But yes, we're going to add our spike rush. I've drilled a hole through this lava rock, and I've just stuck the rush right there in that hole. This stuff is related to hairgrass, and I believe it's even better, more suited for aquatic environments. And yeah, we're just going to drop it in there. It's a little rough on the spike rush, but this stuff is impressive. It's hard to kill. You'd have to really, really try hard to kill spike rush. And to me, that makes it valuable. Because my plants are not necessarily for decor, they are for function. They serve a purpose, they have a job. And I can't have them dying or being very fragile and weak. Spike rush is durable and very just long-lasting. Tolerates low light, everything. So now we're taking some samples from the giant reed jar aquarium, and we're going to inject that right into this tank, and that's because there are a number of aquatic earthworms in there, and I would love to get them started in this build. I'll do a few injections. I'm not going to bore you with any long-form video, but yes, I injected a few shots in here, and you might have seen a couple of the worms there. Looking at the substrate, you can see our snails are feasting. I'm starting the tank with just a pinch of fish flakes here and there, and we're going to let this run for quite a while before I add any guppies. It's because I'm not sure about this jug. I want to make sure the system is fully cycled and ready to go before I add any fish. The snails are occasionally climbing out of the water, but this is not exactly unusual behavior for them. They are most likely feeding on little bits of water meal that have gotten up there and started to dry out. As long as they don't try to climb out of the tank, we're fine. Normally I would have a lid on here or a screen mesh top, but with fish, I don't have to do that. Our guppies will eat any types of drain flies or anything that tries to breed in here, any insect larvae, things like that. Our guppies will happily eat them before they get too big. And again, looking at the substrate, our snails are cruising around. They're doing a good job. This is a day or two after setup. And with this tank, I am trying a whole whole new vibe, a new idea. I want to create something that is super reliable long term. And I'm trying to do this for a reason, because I have a dwarf guppy. I have a little short guppy, and I want to get him, specifically that one, to breed and to collect the fry and to observe them, and hopefully, possibly, we might have some very tiny guppies in the future. I find it very interesting how the hairgrass sways a little bit in the tank due to the airline. And yeah, so that shows that we have a little current in here. The water is moving around. 4 days after setup, I have submerged a piece of cucumber impaled on a steel spike, and the snails are responding immediately. They are laying eggs right next to the cucumber, which is typically what they will do. And it's almost like they are converting that cucumber slice into bladder snail eggs directly. I think that's really cool. Sometimes I tend to think about them like biomachines, like little explorers that go out, they replicate, they collect nutrients, they replicate again. Very much like a von Neumann probe, just the tiny aquatic version. And I do think these snails are pretty cool. They are kind of derpy. These guys are descended from my mutant population, and I don't see snails do things like this too often. They are kind of sticking their heads up in their shell in the most roundabout way possible. Again, this is most likely normal behavior, but I haven't seen this much in my own populations. These snails are going to be a little bit different, as their ancestors were exposed to some things which affected their DNA. Many of those interesting traits that I featured on the channel, I was unable to continue those in future generations. They didn't pass on, or the mutant snails themselves, they were not viable, they could not reproduce. But I noticed something in this population. You see that fleshy mass on the shell? I'm getting all excited. That fleshy mass, that is the snail's mantle. That's part of their body, and they can actually stick it out and onto the shell. And I always find that very interesting. Now, previously, I spoke with a few of you about how this is sort of natural for bladder snails. They can do this, especially in low oxygen environments. But this tank is running with a decent air pump. You saw the current of the water. It is being oxygenated. And either way, these snails are still showing the mantle extension. And what I'm trying to document here is not just that their mantles are extended, but that the extension is exaggerated, is really, really noticeable. And I think that's pretty impressive. I believe that is a trait related to their mutant heritage. They're not they're not crazy two-headed creatures, but they do have some traces of that in their biology, in their genes. And I think those mantle extensions being so well visual, like so well noticed, to the point where they're wrapping around the entire shell almost. I believe that is the mutant trait that we were looking for. One, at least, that passed down to the offspring. And there's no telling which genes are connected. Sometimes you can do something like you can modify an animal to make them albino and completely change their behavior. Things like that do happen. So that may be linked to the split tail mutation. It may be linked to other things. So guys, I'm going to have to cut this video in half. It's getting too long. I'm very grateful for everyone watching. We will add our guppies in the next segment, and I'll try to have that up as soon as possible so you don't have to wait too long. This is Bucket Ponds. My name is Terry, and thank you so much for watching. Big thank you to my YouTube members and Patreon supporters, everybody out there. I promise you'll see the guppies in the next video. I'm excited myself, and I wanted to build up a little bit of hype with you guys as well. You know, guys, it seems like yesterday when we had just a handful of subscribers, and I'm still in communication with many of you, those first few people. But now I look and we're at 8,000, 8,100, and I'm just overjoyed. So thank you. Thank you so much for believing in the channel, for giving me a chance, letting me pop up on your phone here and there. It means so much to me. So have a great day. I'll have part 2 up immediately, and I'll see you there.